All right, welcome to episode 4 of the Sunday Letters podcast. Dimitri Belkov, myself, Larry Maguire. We're on the topic of work, the meaning of work, the purpose of work, contemporary work, what it's all about, why we bother. Do most of us work maybe as a means to an end, or do we work because we enjoy what we're doing? It would seem it's the former. And linked to that whole idea of work and meaning and work and stuff is David Graeber's concept of bullshit jobs, kind of a colloquial term around jobs that are meaningless and worthless in and of themselves. They mainly exist almost like they were created out of a vacuum. That a vacuum created them. There's a quote, I can't remember who said it now. That work expands to fill the space that exists or whatever. So maybe that's true. Anyway, this is Sunday Letters podcast. Goes out weekly on Substack, and Dimitri and I talk about uh, aspects of work and people's work and why we do it and what we do maybe if we didn't have work. Within this capitalist system, there are other formulations of how you and I and people in general can organize ourselves um, to benefit ourselves and benefit society and so on, that maybe are more healthy than the one we currently have. So we're talking about all of this and how we can do it to best serve ourselves and society and so on. David Graeber wrote a book in 2018 titled Bullshit Jobs. Dimitri, you put me onto this book. In fact, the original article that he wrote, I think, what was it, 2013, of the
Yeah, it
same
was.
name, on for Stripe magazine, got the whole ball rolling on this topic. So we're going to talk about that today. Um, Before we get into the conversation, if you enjoyed the stuff that we're talking about and writing about, consider becoming a paid subscriber. It costs maybe €4, $4 a month, and you'll help us create more time to do this thing. We also have other stuff like merchandise, a branded coffee mug, Sunday letters. We have other merchandise. We have what else have we got? Well, there's the membership, and you can share this publication with your friends and so on, and get 3 months subscription to the podcast and to the articles that we write. So if you like what we're doing, please consider supporting us. Right, this week, David Graeber, the late David Graeber, passed away a couple of years ago. Dimitri, where did you first come across this guy, and what captured your interest about what he was doing um, enough to get into this? Why are we talking about this man?
Yeah, well, I think I first encountered this article when I was in college with you, actually, in the psychology course. I don't remember the name of the lecturer who mentioned it. I think it was John, I suppose. But yeah, at some stage he mentioned this article that there was this guy, anthropologist, who wrote it, and it's pretty was good article, and talked about the situation in the workforce, in contemporary workforce. And so it seems to me when I read the article first, it's kind of resonated with me, you know. And I was working at the time at the financial organization already, and it seems to me like, yeah, this article was pretty much saying about my experience and all that. And then after I finished my job in this organization, I moved to Estonia. I decided to read the book. It was released in, yeah, as you said, in 2018.
So
And
what was the nucleus of this idea, bullshit jobs? What was he talking about?
well, his idea is that many jobs, contemporary jobs, are basically uh, give people the sense of meaninglessness. So people themselves believe that they do nothing. They feel desperate. They even hate their jobs because they even getting depressed, you know, in their workplace because they think that if their job wouldn't exist, it wouldn't change anything, you know,
Right.
in the world. So they don't contribute anything to the society in any sense. So that was my feeling at that time as well. The job I'm doing is the same bullshit in his terms.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't have any meaning actually. And so he decided. Well, the article was met with a lot of feedback and criticism, and he decided to develop the full-blown book out of it. And so yes, here we are talking about this book actually.
And the counter argument would be, one of the counter arguments to this idea that most work that people do is bullshit, meaningless, doesn't provide any value to the world, and so on, is that why would these jobs exist if they had no value to the capitalist system? Why would a competition based organization or number of organizations globally, and we were talking about this whole idea of competition last week, why would a system constructed on the merit on competition or merit in competition, competitive marketplace, create jobs that it didn't need? Um, what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on that? I mean, surely to God, these jobs wouldn't exist if they weren't required.
Yeah, but I mean, I think his idea, he argues that um, all these jobs exist due to several factors, and I mean, a couple of them more important will be its proliferation of bureaucratization, uh, development of technology, and social norms. Basically, these three mainly overlap.
Mm.
And so, what I mean by social norms is, like, as we probably talked about in our previous episodes, that people expect you to be employed, to
Yeah.
work,
Mm.
do something. So if you're unemployed, you are stigmatized in a sense.
Mm.
You don't
You're
provide any
kind of
value to the
you're
society. Yeah,
useless.
even if, yes. So even this job is meaningless, doesn't bring any value to society. You had to work,
Mm.
regardless. And the other point, development of technology. So as many of the jobs started to be automatized,
Mm.
and so that leaves people, a certain amount of people, just unemployed basically. And so you need to create some space for them to be employed. So, and that's why you need to create some jobs that probably doesn't have to exist in the first place,
Mm.
but you need to accommodate those people who left behind, without the job.
Yeah.
And then yeah, and actually that leads to bureaucratization. So you kind of create this meaningless job, managerial position, administrative kind of
Mm.
position. So
A lot of these
which are
things,
basically,
an argument that I would hear just colloquially myself, and from my wife who works in a care profession. She's a nurse, and she would oftentimes come home and say there are more people with clipboards, administrators the medical in the care profession in the hospitals and the healthcare system than there are medical staff, and it seems that this bureaucracy, this top down thing, it just proliferates throughout all human activity. The belief, perhaps, that in order to get people to be productive, you have to have people cracking the whip. That there has to be someone looking over their shoulder, making sure that they're doing what they're doing. That seems to be
yeah.
the story. So you have all this bureaucracy that you mentioned, and then you have to hire people in order to tick boxes, and that's one of the actual categories that he mentions, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So and you'll see, especially, and because he is a professor in the university, he gives an example where the managerial staff within the university kind of proliferated, and you end up as a teacher, as a lecturer, just filling some useless form most of the time rather than teaching students,
Yeah, yeah.
so
I
something
know
like
how
that.
that feels. Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, and the last reason probably he mentioned, well, it's not the reason, probably it's more speculation, but it makes sense for me because if you look at it, these jobs are meaningless if we accept this fact. But then for what reason? Like why are we doing them? And he provides one reason for that, that some people just don't want us to not work, to not doing anything, because then we have free time, then we
Mm.
can talk about politics, then we can research stuff, and we realize that we live in this environment and that is corrupt in a sense,
Mm.
and we probably gonna organize some upheaval in a sense, riot or
So,
whatever.
so we're descending into conspiracy theory, maybe a little bit,
Well,
or
yeah, I
maybe not.
mean,
Whatever.
or
Yeah.
maybe not. Yeah, I mean, he made this point in the book, and I think there is something to it. If you if you work like from 9 to 5, 5 days a week, you come back home exhausted,
Mm.
probably depressed. You don't have time pretty much for anything else. You just switch on telly, order some food, and that's it basically.
Yeah.
That your
So,
your your,
so
your free time is spent this way.
the system keeps people occupied,
Yeah,
maybe
occupy your mind. Yeah,
just on the breadline, or um, on the merry-go-round, or merry-go-round maybe is a wrong analogy, but the treadmill of achievement. And so you always have to maintain your standard of living. And once you're engaged in whatever work it is, in order to obtain that or maintain that particular standard of living, you've no time for anything else. You're just
exactly.
worn out. And the idea that you would work 40 hours, for most people, 40 hours a week, is unrealistic, because most people don't switch off when they go home. They take their work with them. So you could argue that people are working psychologically. Either they're thinking about the work that they did yesterday or this week, and bemoaning the fact that they needed to do it, or they're anticipating the work that they need to do on Monday or tomorrow or whatever day it is. And so they're always kind of engaged in the whole work mode, and have no
Yeah,
time to think about politics and scrutinize the message that we're receiving. For a lot of the times, it's manipulated in a particular way in order for politicians to be elected and all this kind of thing. We've no time to scrutinize how our food is made and how it's created, the waste that exists. That this is We're too busy. And
yeah.
so, and it's crazy as well, isn't it? Someone mentioned this. I don't know where I saw it, but I picked it up somewhere along the road. Is that it's a crazy situation where we only get 2 days off a week, and we work five, and so we have to give ourselves over to an organization for five of our days of any given week, and rest for two. Why
Yeah.
do we give them so much of our time? So
But,
we
but, but
sleep
you
for
know,
eight, we work for eight. What do we do with the other eight? We're supposed to enjoy ourselves and relax and all this, but it's a nonsense. We don't.
yeah. And yeah, that's the interesting. I heard it somewhere as well, or I read it somewhere else, that actually when you apply for the job and they hire you, they not only dictate your working hours, so they don't only tell you when you need to work, but they also allocate your free time, so they control your free time. So, and when I heard about it, it's kind of getting more even scary for me, like appalling in a sense. Like
Yeah,
I never thought about it like in this way,
yeah,
that not only they dictate your working hours, but they dictate when you have your right for free time,
yeah,
for
yeah.
your
It's a
leisure
crazy
time.
situation. Yeah.
Yeah,
So Graeber talks about these categories of bullshit jobs. Um, One major differentiation that sticks out in my mind from the book of the same name, Bullshit Jobs, is jobs that, demeaning jobs. He doesn't categorize those necessarily as bullshit. Sure, he doesn't. I mean, like sweeping the street, or collecting refuse, collecting rubbish, um, or these kind of nasty jobs that most people don't want to do and would refuse to do. He doesn't regard them as bullshit jobs.
I think he mentioned them as a shit job, but I think he referred to common opinion, about these jobs. But although
Mm.
he actually appreciate this type of jobs.
But completely necessary
Yeah,
work.
yeah, yeah.
Mm.
Also, some of them, what he calls probably, but we can probably touch on this later. He calls some of them, in some situation, like second order bullshit jobs,
Okay.
because they support, in a sense, the first order bullshit jobs. Let's
Yeah.
say the example: if you sit in the office, and mainly office is taken to be this kind of citadel of the bullshit jobs.
Mm.
So if you are a janitor, for example, in this institution, so you're basically cleaning the office, which basically you don't need to if these jobs wouldn't exist in the first
Mm.
place. They are meaningless. So you kind of support this meaninglessness by
Yeah.
cleaning there.
Mm. And so maybe bullshit jobs have a value in the sense that they create meaningful jobs, but you take them away and the meaningful job doesn't exist any longer.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And if you look at this, I even thought early on this morning about the teachers, in a sense. That not it's not to say that I'm against the teaching and all that, but uh, many people just send their children to school because they have no time. They're working from 9 to 5, so they don't have time to educate themselves, their children. So,
Mm.
but if you remove these jobs, for example, and well, as Graeber suggests, probably we get to the point where we gonna get our universal basic income as a replacement for that. So you have more time to stay home. You can spend time educating your kids. You don't have to send them to school. So effectively, teachers cease to exist, probably.
But
Stuff like this.
they make that process very difficult, seeing as we're on the topic. You can do it, but I suppose certain cultures will entertain it, but other cultures will come and arrest you for mistreating your children, or
Yeah,
supposedly treating your children, or giving your children the opportunity to be educated, when really the system, and Roger Waters was singing and writing about this in 1980 or 1979 uh, on the album The Wall, um, where his request was for teachers to leave those kids alone, and
yeah,
Another Brick in the Wall Part 2. Great tune. I remember when I was a kid, uh, that was number one in the UK and Ireland for a period in 1980, early 1980, I think it was. And I used to imagine myself, being a hero at 8 years of age in the schoolyard, and all the kids would revolt against the teachers, and we'd be free. And really, that's what kind of was represented in the song: the fact that school is just authoritarian system that compels kids to behave and perform and prepares them for the workforce. So it is almost like school is like the kindergarten for the workforce, and then we're ready to go. We fit into the
mhm,
system, and we're ready to obey. Not only that, not only the school system, but you also had religion, organized religion, providing the same function as to keep people in check. Um, Kind of slightly going off the topic with that one, but I suppose the point is that we're prepared for the workforce, aren't we? Through the systems that we engage in our youth, and if too many of us decided to educate our own kids, or believe that we could, I believe large numbers of us probably aren't capable of schooling our own kids, merely by the fact that we were educated in the system that
yeah,
replicates itself over and over again. Even if we could, um, we probably wouldn't, because we're too busy. We believe
yeah.
ourselves to be too busy. Exactly what you said. So, where were we? So we're talking about these kind of categories of bullshit jobs that Graeber, I suppose, arbitrarily decided to kind of label and categorize, but I think they have some merit. Um, so maybe we'll.
Well, first of all, I think we need to point out that this job predominantly uh, um, proliferated due to expansion of certain sector. So for example, jobs in certain sector, as Graeber mentioned himself, it's not a service sector that actually expanded nowadays, but what he called FIRE, fire sector. So what he means by this is
Mm,
finance, insurance, and real estate. So these are generally the domain where those bullshit jobs actually exist.
mm.
So banking institution, yeah, financial institution, yeah, insurance companies, all that. It's not to say that they don't exist in public sphere as well, so in government institution, but yeah, you can see them
But
in more
you could arguably say that uh, these domains of work, these industries, there's nothing below them. They're not built on anything. They're merely
yeah, well,
concepts.
yeah. Well, if he took, for example, banking, well, not banking, financial institution, well, banking institution also include, but they don't produce anything basically. What they do is they trade and manipulate just various form of debt basically.
They
So
speculate.
that's it. So speculation, yeah, basically, nothing else.
Mm,
Nothing of value, you may say, for the people. Well, of course, you can take a look from a different perspective. Let's say, well, we have a bank, we have this whole transaction that easy our life, in a sense, make it faster, more convenient. But then you can go even deeper into this philosophy and say, well, do we really need that?
Mm.
I mean, because I know the times, and you probably know this times as well. You're older than me. That we used to get our salaries in cash,
Yeah.
so there was no. But now, I don't know since when it was mandatory to open an account, and you can only receive your salary to your bank account. So they oblige you to do this. So many people didn't want to do that. That
Mm.
they were happy to receive cash and all that.
Mm.
So it seems like they provide us convenience, but probably they pursue their own here goals more than they care about our convenience in a sense.
Of course, I mean they're not concerned about our convenience at all. That's just a sales pitch, isn't it? I mean,
Mm.
um, the whole idea of the whole idea of banks originated um, whereby you had 100 grams or 100 ounces of gold. You wanted to keep it secure because you were afraid someone was going to steal it from you. And so the banks took everyone's gold and kept it in the vault and then decided, well, what this is very simplistic terms. I'm not an economist, but this is how I understand it. They then realized that they could lend this gold out uh, and keep two parties happy and make money in the process through interest. Of course, there was a time when interest was considered abhorrent and immoral, but how things have changed. But um, now there's no gold. It's simply money is simply digital, and it's transferred around the world at at a keystroke. And banks don't need money in order to lend money. In fact, they lend you money based on your signature at the bottom of a contract, a promise to pay or whatever it is. So you say, I found this house, I want to buy it. Um, it costs 100,000. Well, there's no such thing as a house that costs 100,000 these days. It costs 100,000. They say, okay, we'll give you a loan. We'll give you a loan, but they don't have anything to loan. So you sign the bottom of the document, and they take the documents from thousands of people just like you, and they go to the central bank and they say, we've got all these people who are willing to give us money. And they go, okay, well, here's your money. And they hit a key on the keyboard and they send it to you. And then they hit their key on their keyboard and they send it to you. They send it to them. And so it's kind of imaginary money. So there's nothing there, essentially, except your
Yeah,
commitment to pay them back what you borrow. And so all the jobs that are associated, that it's kind of it looks like smoke and mirrors really, and how they do business. So you have all these jobs, which essentially they've been slowly but surely getting rid of due to technology. You can't walk into a bank now and find somebody to help you. You have to make an appointment. Um,
mhm.
so it seems to me, at least, that a lot of these industries are built upon nothing. It's like fresh air. And we
Yeah,
realize this then when we have these economic crashes. But anyway, we have um, these five types of bullshit jobs that Graeber identified: flunkies, goons, duct tapers, box tickers, and taskmasters. Can you bring us through what these are just in a small bit of detail?
yeah. Flunkies, the first one is a pretty interesting one because so this, as he argues, these positions these jobs exist only to give an importance to certain individual, to employer, or to a
Mm.
company. So one of the example would be, the doorman, who opens the door for you.
Yeah,
So just what is he there for?
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
you can open the door yourself, but every well-known important in a sense establishment should have the doorman at their doors,
Mm.
to open the door for their customers or I don't know partners,
Or
just to give
apartment
this
blocks.
aura of importance. Yeah.
Yeah,
And another example would be the guy in the elevator, who
yeah,
presses the button for you.
yeah, 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 yeah. Ludicrous. Yeah.
So yeah, actually, from my example, my personal experience, this morning, I went to the barber shop, and there was a receptionist there. Just collect the money,
Mm.
nothing else.
Right.
So why don't they why can't they collect the money themselves, the hairdressers, you know what I mean?
Mm.
So they have this receptionist there, which is who is sleepy most of the time, reading a book or something, don't do anything
Mm.
apart from chatting and sleeping. And that's it. This
Boredom of
job
a bracket. Yeah.
doesn't supposed to exist.
Those whose roles are more about projecting a sense of importance rather than providing anything.
Yes, exactly. That's the main idea behind them. So, well, the second category then is goons, what we call goons. Well, it's pretty much if you can think about advertisers, telemarketers,
Mm.
PR specialists, lobbyists, all them. So in a sense, they try to impose something on you, in an aggressive manner, something probably that you don't want. Like I'm taking the advertisers as a
Yeah.
uh, paradigmatic sort of case, here. So they trying to sell you something you don't want it,
Mm.
and so probably if they wouldn't exist,
Master manipulators, you might
nothing.
say.
Yeah. So nothing gonna change for the people if
So
this.
their only interest is in serving their own particular needs or those of their paymasters, rather than
Yeah,
providing a higher good to society in general.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So then the third one was duct tapers. That one is pretty interesting because I myself was working in the environment where I myself consider myself a duct taper. So basically, this is the guy who kind of fixed the glitch in the system that shouldn't exist there in the first place. I mean, and I
Mm.
give you an example, personal example. So I got in this company where I worked for 2 weeks. I told you, remember
Mm.
previously. So part of the job was you have probably 5 or 4 different tools, 4 different platforms, and across these platforms uh, there was information about particular customer, let's say, scattered. So pretty much on all of these 5 or 4 platforms, there was the same information, but with some exception. There is some minute detail that was different from every single other website, for example, platform. So you need to copy all this information into the sixth platform. So and the question was, how come you can create one platform where all this information already was collected? I mean, so you need to manually go. So you spent a lot of time just going there, copying this information from all these 5 different platforms just to paste it into your last tool.
So you could
And
leave your
that's
brain at
just
home, in other words.
yeah, exactly. So all you need to do, the hardest part is just to remember the sequence and remember which information you already copied and which you didn't. That's it.
Mm.
Basically, the whole job. So if they had a tool, this job wouldn't be necessary at all. So one well organized tool. That's it. So this is the example of duct taping.
Yeah, I've had that. I often think in lecturing, in my lecturing role, a lot of the work that we needed to do behind the scenes um, was unnecessary and could be removed if we just had a better system.
Yeah,
But everyone stuck to the system, and it seemed to me never questioned it, and it was incredibly frustrating to have to work with, because it's like copying information from one Word document to another, changing the date and then saving it and then sharing it with somebody else. What and the same stuff is just going through so many hands and
yeah.
recreating the same stuff over and over and over and over again. And just I I just couldn't do it. Well, there's one of the reasons why I left that role. Anyway, I can relate to that myself. So then
Mm.
we have box tickers. What's the story with these guys?
Well, they basically the people who employed in these positions in these jobs, they pretend doing something, but in fact they do not. Well, one of the example would be, for example, well, again from my experience, which, for example, compliance department. Uh, as Graeber himself suggests, if it wasn't for regulation, for bank regulation, created this sort of norms, so we need to go through the documents and all that. So this financial institution wouldn't hire you. So you are there just to comply with this regulation. So
Mhm.
the financial institution can say to them, to central bank, look, listen, we have this guy, he's doing this kind of job, and they are fine, in
Yeah.
this regard. But eventually, it doesn't have any value in a sense.
Mm.
The other example would be probably, when you hire somebody, probably even psychologist, I don't know, organizational psychology, where, for example, say set a target for him. Excuse me. Let's say he issue a survey, for example, for a team of organization, and ask there like what is to be improved, let's say. So he received back the filled in forms and all that.
Mm.
He actually go through them, put the data into the computer, and then everybody forgets about this. He is just doing it for the sake of it. It doesn't go anywhere else. Nothing is improved. He just there to fulfill this position. I mean, it's organizational psychologist, let's say. That's, I'm not saying that they don't do anything. It's just rough example of one part probably of the job.
Yeah, or a load of undergrads or recent graduates involved in a project. Um, they might think that the work is valuable, but they're so removed from the actual end result. End result perhaps is to get published, to get another paper published. So it's this academic one-upmanship rather than anything else,
Mhm.
or you're required through your employment to produce a certain number of publications during your tenure or whatever.
Mhm.
And this is the reason why you're doing it. It's not because there's value in the work or the research in and of itself necessarily, but you're doing it because you have to do it in order to keep your job. So you're on the hamster wheel the whole time. That's just
Yeah.
that's just mind numbing. That kind of stuff. I mean, is it no any wonder that people are so disconnected from their work and depressed and uptight and anxious and stressed out and dissatisfied with their work? Take any survey you want in recent times, and all of those surveys on happiness with work, and they'll indicate that large chunks, like anywhere from 30 to 50% of respondents, are dissatisfied and unhappy with their work. Is it any
Yeah.
wonder if this is what they're doing? Just ticking boxes all day. It's like a shelf fell down in on the ward where my wife used to work. Um, the shelf wasn't put up right. There were a number of different people, administrative staff, arrived on the ward with clipboards to assess the situation. It only would have taken one of those people with a screw gun and a few screws and drywall fixings to get that shelf back up. And yet they wasted all this time filling out incident forms and reporting to senior staff about the shelf that fell down. You know, is it any wonder that public money goes to such poor use, and so many people are not being cared for in the healthcare system? It's not only Ireland; it's globally, I would say. But
Yeah.
um, box tickers, yeah, uh, survey administrators, compliance officers, corporate auditors. God,
That was one nice example that Graeber himself provided for box stickers, probably even better example than I provided. So he said, imagine the corrupt politician, for example. So they were noticed that they take bribes, for example.
mm,
So then you create a separate commission for that. So they pretend they go through all this investigation, checking the facts, filling reports, and then these reports are basically forgotten because we still see this bribery and all the stuff.
yeah,
So it's just to tick a box. We kind of checked them. It's fine.
mm,
We work as usual,
yeah.
nothing else.
Our work,
So nothing changed.
yeah, our work has essentially become an abstraction. It has
Mhm.
no meaning in and of itself, other than to enable someone to tick a box. Um, and then the fifth type of job or bullshit job that he identified was taskmasters. I think he said he two types of people
Yeah.
in here, or two types of subtypes of job here. What's the story of this one?
Well, to give an example, so this first type that probably tells something to do and that he considers itself to be bullshit, basically, if he doesn't have to say to the people what to do. I mean, people know themselves what to do. You know what I mean? And
Mm,
I keep in mind that this is related more to managers, I would say. So many managers report, and I had this experience of myself seeing my managers through this kind of lens, that basically if we didn't have this manager, well, nothing would change. I mean, he's there only to give us tasks, but we know
mm,
what to do. I mean,
mm.
we know the process, we know our job, our duties to do. So why are you even there? You know, that was
Yeah.
my question.
Mm.
So they to give you tasks, but yeah, but we don't need it. We know how to do stuff,
Or
and
if
that's
you're if you were if you had if you had got your work done and there was still time in the day, they'd give you something to do just to keep you
yeah.
moving or just to keep you busy.
Well, well, that's actually pretty much the second type. So they give you bullshit, so bullshit jobs. I mean, to
Yeah.
do so. So the first type, they're doing given tasks, and they know that they're doing bullshit. They are useless. Everybody knows how to do it. And the second time, not only they give the tasks, but they also uh, put on the shoulders of the employee just another portion of bullshitness.
Mm.
In a sense. So how can it manifest itself? So for example, I remember from my job experience that he can ask you, for example, to create some graphs, productivity graph that nobody cares about it. So employee, one particular employee gonna do this, spend like weeks probably. Then he will do this presentation. Nobody cares about it most of the time.
Yeah.
So it's kind of just, as you said, just fill somebody's time, with this bullshit. Okay.
Yeah, and there's a quote there I picked up. I'd like to share with you. I picked up the other day, and it just speaks to you know captures what we've been talking about. Um, Barbara Heinrich, or at least was, she's passed away, deceased in 2022, American author and political activist. She said, please, no more talk of companies giving people jobs. In reality, the gift relationship goes in the opposite direction. Workers give their blood, sweat, and tears, sometimes their lives, and in return, companies pay them the minimum they can get away with.
Hmm.
Seems to capture it and add to that then that a lot of these jobs are nonsense. And here's an example of why of how it maybe a particular case proves that they're nonsense. A friend of my wife's um, lives locally here, works for a major global bank in IT, or at least used to. She's taken redundancy after 20 years with the bank or whatever it is. Quite a senior position in the bank in IT, um, and she took redundancy. Nice pay packet. They're giving her 12 weeks gardening leave, which is another nice little sweetener. She's doing reasonably well out of it for the time she has spent, the time she has given up. Because I've had conversations about the work that she used to do, and it's come back to me through conversations she's had with my wife, how stressful and demanding this role was. It turns out that this particular bank has let go, or is planning and in the middle of letting go 20,000 workers over the next 2 years globally. Um, and her job now is being replaced or has been replaced by four other workers. So there's four people now doing the job that she used to do, right? Um, and she had a conversation with one of those workers who suggested that in a year's time she come back to work for this bank and work for this person in the bank. And she said, "Yeah, that sounds like something I can do." What's going on here? So no, they're turning what was one job into five jobs.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, Now, what is the logic in doing something like this? So here's what I would propose is the logic. The markets like to see when staff are let go because it means that the bank or the organization has less overhead. So it's good for profits. It's good for the bottom line. It's good for the balance sheet. It's good for the market. It's good for Wall Street to see when a bank or any global organization lets go a load of people, the share price goes up. So in order to manipulate the market, this is what they do. So it's not only
Yeah,
about the question is not only do we need these people or what people do we not need. It's about how can we convince the market that we are a progressive bank and that we're interested in shareholder value.
yeah.
You know?
So yeah, I heard about it as well. So for example, they overhire people in the beginning, so that raises the share value as well, because it gives the perception that the company is growing, so
Mm,
it has a future
yeah.
opportunities there.
Mm,
But then when they need to save money, they kind of reduce amount of people,
mm,
so by basically firing them, yeah,
mm.
in most of the cases,
If
and
you're a
that
gardener,
again bring the yeah,
if
yeah,
you're a gardener or a farmer or you have an orchard, you know that if you trim the orchard this year, your harvest won't be great next year, but the year after it will be much better. So this is the logic also, is that we trim back more than we actually need or should. We'll It'll give us the capacity to grow, and they work on this logic.
yeah. But
Um,
I think the difference between the gardener, well, it's probably in that he does this job, or he plans it without any ideas of benefiting or
mm,
profiting, but whereas the company, they do it intentionally,
yeah,
to play on the market,
yeah,
to manipulate it.
play the game, yeah. And
Yeah,
and what's the upshot of all of this? Well, we all need to work. Well, could put it another way, we all need to earn money because this is how we've designed the system. If we don't have money, we're screwed. So we have to work. Or if we don't work, we become a bum. We take the dole, and this is how we live, and we just get by. Um, we might get into it in a later episode. Is the whole idea of universal basic income. It's
yeah,
kind of gone off the radar a little bit in recent times, but it's still there, and I think it's been proven. There's certain cases for it being proven. I think in order for it to be rolled out, it's essentially universal basic income is essentially the state paying people, um, let's call it a stipend, or let's call it an income, a monthly income to just live and do what they want. They don't have to work. Um, and so you go out and you pay for what you pay for, and you live, you pay your mortgage, and you buy food and all the rest of it from this. It's not a social payment. It's something different. Um, and it's been proven to work. Um, it provides people with the means by which to actually do something creative and maybe start their own thing, and give them the space to breathe. A lot of crime has been associated with poverty. The wealthiest people in the country don't go around stealing from each other, and at least not overtly. They might do it in other ways, through um, ill-gotten means of business and so on. But the most um, disadvantaged areas of society are usually in poverty, the poorest, and they don't have advantage. They're always on edge. They suffer a lot with anxiety and stress, and all that comes with it. And the argument is if we provide them a basic income, a little bit more than what they need to survive, that lives and society and so on will be better. Um, Now, I don't know. The capitalists will have to agree to that, um, considering how much they've infiltrated politics. It's not going to happen unless they buy into it. I honestly don't know how we go about changing that system. But
yeah. I mean, even Graeber, I mean, he suggests that we need to change our mindset, in a sense, all those cultural norms and all that, look from the different angles. So now, as I mentioned, we look at this, at the work in general, like it's a duty, it's our sacred duty to do it, so we have to do it.
mm,
If you're unemployed, it's bad. So he said we need to change this mindset nowadays, because yeah, at the moment, with all this automatization, we probably don't need to work as hard as we used to.
mm,
So many jobs are effectively unnecessary. But
Yeah.
here is the question then, like even when we get this universal basic income, how do we separate between jobs which are necessary and unnecessary, and what people should work and what people should stay home? You know what I mean? So
Mm,
isn't it gonna be some sort of envy between those groups of people, you know?
yeah.
Well, for example, plumbers, electricians, let's say, so they always have something to do.
Mm.
But all the people who are now in the offices, let's say, for example, they're gonna sit at home, doing nothing at all,
Well, here
So
I'll give
how
you
is
this is a rare example, but here's an example of why it's important to allow people to back off and give people the space to make their own decision. This kid, he's in his 20s, the son of a friend of ours, and when he was in school, he went on this kind of transition year training thing with a financial organization, an accounting firm, or something like that. And when he finished school, they said, "You come and work for us for 4 years. We'll give you an apprenticeship, and you can go to college and you can build a career." So it seemed like a good idea to this kid at the time. Fast forward 4 years, and he's decided to pack it all in. He said, "It's not for me. Uh, I want to work in gardens. I want to be a horticulturist." So that's what he's doing. And he's even thinking about going out on his own and doing his own thing. I think that's amazing that
mm,
someone has the balls to say, you know what, I'm not doing this. I can't do this for the rest of my life. There has to be something else. And there's another example, another young person that I know gave up her job in, I don't know what she was in, marketing or something like this, another bullshit job designed merely as a job designed merely as a mechanism to convince you and I to buy stuff that we don't need. Um, she stopped her job and now she's making cakes and protein balls and all kinds of things. She buys her ingredients from Lidl or Aldi or whatever it is, and she goes baking and then she sells all her stuff to coffee shops and stuff around the city. Brilliant, right? She another
yeah,
little entrepreneurial endeavor off the ground, and I think that's the future. It has to be the future because otherwise we're waiting to be given jobs. And I
yeah,
don't know how we break down that system, that top down hierarchical system that there's a boss and we all work for the bosses. It's a Ponzi scheme, you could say. It's like
yeah,
we never get out of that. It's a trap. And then you end up
yeah,
with the likes of Jeff Bozo, who has who earns 10 billion a week or whatever it is, probably more than that. I mean, that's obscene. There's people living in tents on the street in cities, major cities all over the world, and you have this fucking bozo who builds rockets and sends himself and his wealthy friends into outer space. This is insane situation where all these people can be working and providing this wanker with the opportunity to do whatever he likes and then more, to be essentially in control of everything. Because
yeah.
there are people like him are just pulling the strings and dictating the situation. So I don't know
But
how that changes.
here's another example I was thinking about recently. It's about the topic of war, but just briefly, that United States agreed to again give to Ukraine some billions. I don't remember exactly,
And
but I
Israel,
was thinking that yeah, but I was thinking, Jesus, you can print this money to billions, and why you have people in your country living in tents with
yeah.
no houses, nothing? Why don't you print this money to accommodate them? That's for me a paradox, complete paradox.
Well, it's insane. It's a measure of an insane society. It has to be.
So it's better we give this money for killing people than facilitate and
Yeah,
accommodate people in our home.
yeah.
That's crazy.
Richie Sunak as well. He's made multi billions available, um, for the IDF, to drop bombs on the people in Gaza, rather than to support the people in his own country. It's an insane situation, but we're complicit in it. You know.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, getting back to the bullshit jobs, as you mentioned, this whole hierarchy, everybody tries to get, because these jobs are considered to be of prestige type, they're better than being a janitor or whatever. So everybody wants to climb to be a manager, to be a boss of somebody below you. And actually, it's interesting. Graeber mentioned this point. that where this idea that all these jobs that are meaningful, sorry, are treated in a way that they're not worthy of attention,
Yeah, that's a really
people's
good point,
attention.
actually. Yeah.
And he said like it probably even goes from religion as well, because the Adam and Eve, they were kind of exiled from gardens of Eden, and so they had to work now to sustain themselves.
Mm,
And so he said that probably unconsciously it's still in our heads that we do this punishing work. We don't like it, but we realize that we had to do it. We
mm,
have to suffer in order to. The work is associated with this primordial suffering, in our heads.
mm.
And so those people who work in the position they like, for example, even social workers, or probably janitor like his job. I mean, he does something useful, so they are not paid exactly for this reason because they enjoy this job. They shouldn't get more paid for this job, because
Mm.
they feel satisfaction. You should get paid more only in the circumstances where you basically suffer in doing your job. Isn't
Yeah,
it the real logic
yeah,
in a
it is.
sense?
It's mental. It's purely
Yeah,
insane. You can get paid 1,000 an hour, or 2.5 grand an hour, or 10 grand an hour if you're a merchant banker, or if you're a corporate lawyer or whatever. But if you're a nurse and you're in the accident and emergency department in the Mater Hospital, you get paid, what is it, €22 an hour?
yeah, yeah.
What the hell? It's messed
That's
up.
interesting. Yeah, yeah. And here's another paradox he actually mentioned in his book that, yeah, actually, many people work in these jobs that they hate, basically, that don't like. And in the meanwhile, they also feel kind of dignity that they are working, they are valuable members of the society, But, but this conflict, I mean, they hate it and they happy that they work, kind of coexist in the one mindset of the individual.
Mm.
Bizarre.
It is bizarre, and I think my own particular thesis on work is that all these, as Graeber referred to them, bullshit jobs, is what makes people sick. It's a phony, fake plastic environment where we take living, breathing organisms and we force them in to these roles to do this work that has no meaning in and of itself, other than to get a paycheck at the end of the month and pay your bills. And then here we go again. Every month's the same. Keep doing it. Keep doing it. What's the solution? Well, I believe the solution is we do what that former apprentice accountant did, pack it in and become a horticulturalist, or what that 22-year-old marketing executive did by packing in her job and doing her own thing. And the ultimate merit and benefit for not only oneself, but for the broader community and society, of everyone following what it is they want to do, following their curiosity, and building a business of one around that, doing something that keeps them going, that they have a fire in their belly to do. Yesterday was the 1st of May, International Labour Day. So apt that we talk about this. Well, we're always talking about this topic, but maybe good timing. Um, is there anything else we want to touch on before we split?
Uh, we can leave it for another episode, or if you want to, go ahead.
I think, well, I do want to talk about universal basic income. We might get to that in an episode or two's
Yeah,
time.
I mean, yeah, we can make a separate episode for this
Yeah, yeah,
to
but
to to touch on problems which are related to it, and if
yeah.
it's feasible at all, to
Well,
to implement.
it strikes me, and I don't know, maybe my mind will change after we do a bit of research on it, but it strikes me that you're still beholden to someone else. You're still waiting to be paid, cap in hand,
Yeah,
waiting for your few quid on a Friday. And there may well be certain criteria that you have to comply with in order to qualify, right? It still
yeah,
it still puts you in a subordinate position to the state, rather than being in charge of your own life and work, which is what we want to see people doing. certainly what I want to see us doing. So anyway, we'll wrap it up there. Thanks very much, everyone, for listening to this episode of the podcast. If you enjoy what we're doing, check us out on YouTube. You can also get us on Apple Podcasts, Google, Amazon Music, Spotify, anywhere good podcasts are played. You'll get the Sunday Letters podcast. If you're so inclined, please consider becoming a paid subscriber. It costs about £4 a month. Or if that doesn't float your boat, you can give us a tip. And there's a link at the bottom of the notes on YouTube, or also on Substack, or in whatever podcast player you're listening to this or watching. There's a link to give us a tip if you're so inclined, or invest in some merch for yourself. And when you subscribe over on Substack, I'll keep you up to date on things that we're doing and stuff that we're making. And so you can get your hands on some of that. So that's all I've got for now from Dimitri and myself. See you next time. All the best. Mind yourselves.
Yeah.